time for Middays with Mark. Congressman Mark Pocan taking your calls for the hour. He's the co-chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. He represents the second district of Wisconsin in the U.S. House of Representatives. His website is Pocan, POCAN.house.gov, and you can tweet him at Rep, as in Representative, Rep Mark Pocan. Congressman, welcome back to the program.
Thanks, Tom. Real glad to be here.
Thanks for joining us. So there's a lot going on right now. And by the way, I should add it for new listeners, you will be with us for the entire hour taking people's calls at 202-808-9925. So if anybody has an issue they want to bring to your attention or a question for you or whatever it may be, give us a shout. So Nancy Pelosi, this is like, she's like a karate expert or something. I mean, this is jujitsu. This is amazing. Using Trump's own desire for publicity against him, saying, well, George Washington and Thomas Jefferson delivered their State of the Union addresses in writing. You can too. It's pretty amazing.
Well, I mean, obviously, I always explain back home, Donald Trump is probably first a reality show star, second a scheming businessman, and maybe third a president of the United States. Unfortunately, that's how he lived in the job. And he loves, a camera and the press, and he would love to do the State of the Union and say all kinds of things to blame Democrats. And I think, Nancy Pelosi took him right to task and said, fine, if we're still shut down, it's probably not a good idea to have the State of the Union. And I think it goes, after some of the craziness he's done. I mean, just this week, we're ordering back 46,000 furloughed IRS workers to work but no pay, 3,600 people in the FAA. This guy doesn't understand that when he does this, this juvenile approach to how he runs the country, that real people are impacted. And now we're asking more people to go back to work for no pay. It's completely unacceptable. It's crazy. And I think that she took him to task so strongly is smart. And we've got to figure out how to get the government reopened. The economy is hurting. Even the Trump administration doubled their estimates. This is going to cost the economy. It's time to have some adult behavior.
Meanwhile, now that the Democrats are actually running the House of Representatives, really good legislation is being passed, a national raise to $15 an hour by 2024.
Yeah, in fact, this afternoon we're announcing, and I'm one of the lead sponsors with Bobby Scott, who chairs the Ed and Labor Committee, a bill to raise the minimum wage to $15, as you said, by 2024, immediately start getting the wage to go up, like so many states and local communities have increased the wage. But, no family can live on $15,000 a year, and, less than 10% of the people who who receive the minimum wage right now are under 20. So this is one of these myths, right? It's a teenager, it's someone who's just doing this for pocket money. Like the median age is in the mid-30s. These are real people working. It'll increase the pay for 40 million people in this country, and it's going to be one of the priority bills that we move through Congress.
Yeah, the amazing thing is that I believe that when I was a teenager, the minimum wage actually was mostly the teenage wage, and most wage earners had, a union job or its equivalent, about 2/3 of the economy, wasn't it?
Yeah, and that's why, I love when I go to a school, I always ask that question, what percent of people you think who make minimum wage are teenagers? And, usually I get answers like 70%, 50%,
right.
6 or 9.8%. So it really shows these are people who are just working poor in this country, and we're long, long overdue. Doesn't matter where you live in the country, you should have a wage that can support your family.
Yeah, amen. So shall we pick up some phone calls?
Absolutely.
Okay, Richard in Calumet, Michigan. You're on the air with Congressman Mark Pocan.
Hey, Mark. I'm a disabled person, and I've got a friend in your state that's disabled. We're having problems getting our medications. I'm hearing that they're going to cut our food stamps here next month. And what do we do?
Is that because of the shutdown, Richard?
That's what I'm being told.
Yeah, so Richard, I think I just saw something come across my desk this morning that February you should be fine, but they are saying if it goes beyond that, they do have some structural issues. They're going to make it very difficult. And this is Donald Trump's problem. He doesn't realize that people actually rely on the services of the federal government. Maybe Donald Trump, when he was a developer, didn't in the same ways, but most people do have a connection to how government works for them, and it's going to negatively affect a lot of people. So this week again, we've put several proposals to reopen the government. I think the most important is we've been putting out reopen every agency but Homeland Security, bump funding for them for another month so they're funded, And if we really want to have a talk about border security, let's do that. But holding everything hostage, including tax refunds and supplemental nutrition assistance and other things, is a really awful idea. And we're keep gaining Republican support as we do this. In polling, we're gaining. So I hope eventually we can get the president to do the right thing. But this is not the way. There are not major civilized countries that have regular shutdowns like we do. We stand out for this dysfunction, and it's not something we should be proud of.
David in Mamaroneck, New York, you're on the air with Congressman Pocan.
Hi, good afternoon. My question is I read a lot of financial statements at night, and I'm looking at America's got $9 trillion in corporate debt. And I look at companies like Ford. I mean, 50% of their last financial statement, interest expense was as a ratio of the operating income. I mean, that's what's really squeezing the UAW salaries. It's really squeezing salaries across the country. And, when you look at their balance sheets, most of that debt went to stock buybacks or directly to owners' compensation, officers' compensation. What is Congress? Is anybody in Congress looking at this stuff, calling it out, having plans for it, or are we just going to have another bailout? Thank you.
Yeah, David, so I think what we're not necessarily addressing is the debt, but what you mentioned, what the debt is being spent on. So when it's spent on stock buybacks and additional pay and stock incentives for boards of directors, that's not going to employees. It's not being reinvested in the company. That is lost money. And, when the tax breaks that were passed at the end of 2017 by Republicans, 83% of that money goes to the top 1%. This is exactly what we're seeing. This is bad for the economy. This is bad for businesses, and people are talking about it. Sometimes it's harder to get everyone in the media to understand what we're talking about as far as the extent of this, but I think you will have another wave looking at this when people start to get their W-2s, which they're getting right now, and when they file their taxes, you're going to find a lot of people who were promised a cut and didn't get one. And I think it's going to reinvigorate the conversation about where the money's going. So I'm hopeful of that.
Mary in Las Vegas, you're on the air with Representative Pocan.
Good morning. I am unimpressed with Barr's testimony the other day. I think he's been out of the loop for too long, 25 or 30 years. With regard to the emoluments clause, he should have a real good understanding of that. I'm beginning to think he's Trump's Ray Cohn, and it's scary. He talks about the possibility of locking reporters up. What, other than the Fox opinion comment people? And then he doesn't want to take the ethics committee's, his opinion is the last straw on whether to put forward Mueller's findings. Then what's the point of having an ethics committee? These are scary times. And also, as an aside, I have a friend who works for a company that does defense work. 2 more weeks, he says, and they're having layoffs.
Mary, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so Mary, to Barr, one of the things that Tom and I was talking about a little earlier, not on the show, but is the fact that, Barr's history goes back to advising Bush about pardoning folks during the Iran-Contra investigation. So, now if this person is the one consulting the president, what does that mean? So he may have said some good things in committee about making sure the Mueller investigation continues, but if he just has end-run ideas on how to get around it, then we're certainly not any better off. So I hope that the Senate spends a good time having this research about him and debating, because there certainly are, I think, a lot more questions, as you pointed out.
Yeah, this is the headline from December 25th, 1992, New York Times. Bush pardons 6 in Iran affair, aborting a Weinberger trial. Prosecutor assails cover-up. That's just the headline. And then it says, in a single stroke, Mr. Bush swept away 1 conviction, 3 guilty pleas, and 2 pending cases, virtually decapitating what was left of Special Prosecutor Walsh's efforts. Mr. Walsh bitterly condemned the president's action, charging that, quote, the Iran-Contra cover-up, which has continued for more than 6 years, has now been completed. And he added, the prosecutor charged that Mr. Weinberger's efforts to hide his notes may have forestalled impeachment proceedings against President Reagan and formed part of a pattern of deception and obstruction. And apparently Barr was right in the middle of all this. It's pretty amazing. I mean, people just don't even read the New York Times, from 1992.
Exactly.
Anyhow, Congressman Mark Pocan is with us taking your calls for the hour. It's Middays with Mark on the Thom Hartmann Program, and we'll be back with your calls in just a moment. You can check out Congressman Pocan's website at pocan.house.gov, and you can tweet him at Rep, as in Representative Rep Mark Pocan. He is the co-chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. We'll be right back with more of your calls for Congressman Pocan.